Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Bills Mafia Report, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. A special shout out to everybody that is tuning in live right now on YouTube. Please smash that like button for me. And when you subscribe, make sure you turn on those bell notifications so you never miss an opportunity to hop in one of these shows live. A special shout out to everybody listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. If you enjoy the daily content, please do me a favor and leave a rating and review, because today's episode is going to be unpacking the several top 30 visits the Buffalo Bills have already seen come through their doors. Now, each and every single year, each and every single team is allowed to do some further due diligence on players that could potentially fall to them at any respective round. And I could take this episode by going through every single player and telling you whether or not that I would be pleased if the Buffalo Bills selected them at any given moment in the upcoming NFL draft. But I feel like we say that we dive deeper, we see a story here, and we could potentially peek into the mind of Brandon Beane and the front office of the very heavily debated topic of what position group are we targeting and when. It's clear, and we've spoken about this ad nauseum, that the Buffalo Bills clearly need a defensive tackle. They clearly need a CB2. More than likely, they need to double dip at the defensive tackle position. Many would say that an edge rusher is equally imperative, a vertical separating wide receiver at safety, some linebacker depth, the whole nine. I'm sure we are familiar with our needs at this point. However, I'm sitting here looking at the list, and I think I have been able to identify, based off of top 30 visits, where the Buffalo Bills are really looking to target a specific position group. In the first, second, third, fourth, who knows? I'm so excited to dive into this. And you know what? Hands down, I think it's pretty clear right now that the Buffalo Bills are in the market heavily for a defensive tackle and a cornerback, just based off of the top 30 visits so far. I'm looking at the cornerback position right now, and I am seeing Siobhan Revel Jr. He's a corner out of ECU. Many of us, he is one of the apples of our eyes at the position. Of course, his season was cut short in his final year at ECU due to a ACL tear. It's more than likely this prospect would start the season off on the PUP list. However, he still is a first-round prospect, according to several draft analysts. He is still quite regularly being drafted in the late portion of the first round. Then the Buffalo Bills also welcomed Trey Amos, who was at the bottom half of the first round in several mock drafts. I'd say earlier in the season or earlier in the mock draft season, we saw him at the early second, but more and more I have been seeing Trey Amos fall anywhere between 27 to 32 as of late. And then Dorian Strong, a cornerback out of Virginia Tech, who is also up there. I'd say more of like a second round talent. So I'm looking at the cornerback position, and that tells me, hey, we have two prospects that are going in the late first round. What if Brandon Beane is putting a bit more effort into looking at a CB2 within the first round in and of itself? But then I end up shifting over to the defensive tackle position, and this is interesting. Now, obviously, I am not including all of the names that we met with at the Combine, because it doesn't tell the full story. If the front office is making arrangements to fly some of these players out, have a Zoom meeting with them, because there's only 30 possibilities, it sounds like they're really targeting them. And we see the same thing with defensive tackle here. We see Tyleik Williams, defensive tackle, and Omar Norman-Lott, defensive tackle for the Tennessee Volunteers last year. Now, Omar Norman-Lott, several mock drafts, several analysts are pegging him to go right around where the Buffalo Bills begin their second round selections in the late 50s, early 60s. And Tyleik Williams is very much in the beginning of the second round of the draft. So Here's my question. And let me know if you think that I'm onto something right here, because I feel that this might be giving us a clue. I'm not going to say that Buffalo is considering, right, staying at 30 or trading up. I still think that they will slightly trade up for a Kenneth Grant, etc. But obviously, at this point, it is just speculation. I'm looking at Siobhan Rebel, who is at the bottom of the first, Trey Amos, who is at the bottom of the first, sometimes high second, and I'm looking at the defensive tackle. I am looking at Tyleik Williams, defensive tackle out of Ohio State, who is in the early second, and Omar Norman Lott, who is in the late second. What if Brandon Beane's full intention right now, folks, is to trade down from the first round for the second year in a row? We have discussed several times that it's unlikely that Buffalo walks away with 10 picks this year because there's only so many open roster spots. However, just because we trade down from the first does not mean that we are locking and loading several other potential transactions that could allow us to trade up in the second even higher, right? Or trade up from the fourth into the third, finesse some moves, because we look at these potential draft strategies as individual occurrences where, quite frankly, they're not. We have seen Brandon Beane in his history finesse so many different moves to get exactly where he wanted to be. For example, just look at his first draft in 2018, where that man was all over the damn board, right? In order to get Josh Allen, we ended up shipping off, a Cordy Glenn, who was the last person we franchise tagged. Also a later round pick to move up originally with the Cincinnati Bengals. And then we ultimately ended up moving up again with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with another draft capital package. So many different transactions to get to where we wanted to go. And a more recent example would be last year, right? Like we were moving and shaking. Like we initially traded down with the Kansas City Chiefs. And then once it was time for our pick at 32 overall, we traded down again so we can get even more capital, traded up several times in the middle rounds. So is this giving us a sign? And granted, we get 30 of these visits and the puzzle pieces are not all here, but I can't help but start to put together a roadmap of potentially where they could go. Again, cornerback, defensive tackle. What this tells me right now, Siobhan Rebel corner. You have Trey Amos. Both of those guys are late first rounders. Some agree that they are very early second rounders. And Tyleik Williams is an early second rounder, and Omar Norman Lott is a late second rounder. So does Buffalo have every single intention right now, folks, to trade down from the first, if that is exactly who they are eyeing for prospects right here, so that they could trade down from the 30th overall pick and then hop down to 36, 37, for example, grab Tyleik Williams for the first pick in the second round, right? And then ultimately end up going down into 56, where we ultimately end up selecting so at Omar Norman Lott, for example, or maybe we go Trey Amos with the first pick in the second if we elect to trade down, start moving up a little bit, even more into the third. There's so many different possibilities. But I think it's safe to say, based off of the top 30 visits that we have seen, whether our first overall pick is in the first round and or the second, I think we can almost guarantee that it is going to be a defensive tackle and or a CB2. But again, the full story is not here. Moving to other positions, this is pretty interesting. We're looking at defensive end and edge rusher. And the two names that we have provided resources into meeting in person, and these are all the public ones. I'm sure there have been several others. Femi Oladejo, edge rusher out of UCLA. That guy's sitting at around the third, fourth round prospect, depending on who you ask. And then Braden Swinson, edge rusher out of LSU, a third or fourth round edge rusher, depending on where you ask. So it sounds like, based off of all these conversations, unless we see some dramatic fall in the draft board, it sounds like the edge rusher is kind of aiming into the fourth round, is where Brandon Beane might be shifting his focus to on the defensive line. So something to snack on. Safety is even more interesting, right? I don't think anybody was buying into the fact that we were going to walk away um, with an Eminwari and or a Malachi Starks in the first round, right? Like, more than likely, I think both of those guys will be gone prior to the Buffalo Bills and before even the highest possibility of us being able to trade up. But the only safety so far, on top of some local safety out of Syracuse, I wanted to say, that joined the local Buffalo Bills Pro Day, Billy Bowman Jr., all right, safety out of Oklahoma. He's very much a fourth and or a fifth round prospect as well. So safety is probably going to be later on in the draft. And then wide receiver, which I know that everybody is very fascinated with at this point. It's cool because we have Isaiah Bond, who we know that actually had an in-house workout. Have Jalen Lane, a speedster out of Virginia Tech. Keandre Lambert-Smith, a speedster out of Auburn. Arian Smith out of Georgia. Have Isaac Tesla, wide receiver out of Arkansas. And most recently, a Jalen Royals, who many of us know that I am a massive fan of and have been pegging him to be a potential Buffalo Bills fit in this upcoming draft. So I look at all the wide receivers, and that is also painting a picture for me. Late second round and or early third. If, for example, we can get into the third, which I have a feeling that we're 1,000% going to finesse our way into. You got to love it. I feel like this top 30 visit roster here is painting us a picture. It's telling us a story. And that story is picks 1 and picks 2 rotate whatever you want, is either going to be a defensive tackle in CB2 or a CB2 and defensive tackle. I think those are the orders that we can rest our head on. And pick number 3, based off of where the prospects are currently graded to go, wide receiver would be the 3rd overall pick from the Buffalo Bills arsenal. Now, again, things could change. Like, certain prospects could fall that nobody was anticipating would, and we could end up reaching. But tell you what, folks, based off of the trends that I'm seeing, I have a feeling first pick is going to be a CB2. Second pick is going to be a defensive tackle. Third pick is going to be a wide receiver. The 4th selection, the next player that we draft, is either going to be an edge rusher and or a safety based off of who is available on the board. That's what I'm getting, folks. And you know what? I'm actually very interested to see what the live chat has to say about all of these top 30 visits that we just ultimately ended up discussing. Folks, again, if you are listening on Spotify and or Apple Podcasts, this is the portion of the show where I exclusively turn to the live chat and allow them to take control of the conversation. I ask them to, when you do have a question for me, please begin your sentence with a Q dash so I can easily decipher between a question and or a statement. And for those of you that are missing out on audio, certainly consider coming on over to YouTube and turning on those bell notifications when you subscribe so you can be a part of these live Q&A segments on each and every single show, man. We are going to have to see. We have Dan, have habitual line stepper, has come in, our resident Ravens fan who is in here all the time. I love the support, man. Thank you so much. Dan, stop hiding Bob. Seems like you're jealous. It's unbecoming. Dude, you know what? All right. Now, listen, folks, some of you might be confused on who Bob is, especially if this is your first time. But Bob is my Sentry punching dummy that I invested in last season. When I watch Buffalo Bills games, if things get hairy and my overall energy just gets too much, I beat the hell out of Bob. All right, this punching dummy. It's actually quite entertaining. So that is even another reason why you should be coming over to YouTube and turning on bell notifications so you don't miss any live game reactions. But you're right, I am going to fix Bob for you. All right. There he is. There he is. Bob. Bob is back in action, man. He's looking all for you, ready to go. All right, guys. Once again, let's dive into our Q&A segment. Again, if you have a question for me, please begin your sentence with a Q dash so I can easily decipher between everything. Bill Katie is coming. Bill, I sincerely hope you're enjoying your Thursday morning, my friend. Let's see what you got. And do you think the Bills will trade up on the board to the top 5? That is something that I could confidently say is not going to happen. Now, oftentimes during the drafts, I have always been a massive proponent of anything could happen, but if I were to put my mortgage on anything, like say, for example, that I wanted to bet that something is 110% not happening, zero questions asked, it would be that. And it's based off of the behavior of Brandon Beane. Yes, he has traded up quite a bit in his tenure over in Buffalo, but very oftentimes outside of the 2018 selection for our quarterback, and at least for recent years trends, it's been up 2 spaces. It's been up 2 spaces. So we did it 2 years in a row where he ended up walking away with a pick swap and a 4th rounder to move up 2 selections to ultimately end up grabbing Kyer Elam and then also Dalton Kincaid. That has been something that has regularly happened. Let's see. We have Robert has come in. What are the Bills doing with Frank Gore Jr.? Robert Kirsten, I appreciate the question, and I sincerely hope you were enjoying your Thursday as well. So I think he's going to be invited to training camp, right? He just has an uphill battle, right? He just has an uphill battle because while Frank Gore Jr. shares the name of NFL legend Frank Gore, does not always necessarily mean that he is the exact same player, right? I always like looking at players not with any sort of history or familial connections, but rather than the said player. He's a smaller guy, right? And he has a bit of competition on his end, a system that has worked perfectly for Buffalo in the past. Have Ray Davis, who did very well with his limited snaps. You have Ty Johnson as well, who we just ultimately ended up extending for 2 years in a row. And James Cook, based off of reports, is going to play regardless of how he feels about his contract extension. I just saw a video of him showing up to an event in Buffalo where he was signing memorabilia for people. I wanted to say that it was a TSE company where they had a bunch of Buffalo Bills players there signing a bunch of memorabilia. It's meeting fans as well. So those are 3 running backs right now. Typically, Buffalo does keep 4, so it's going to be an uphill battle, right? It's going to be an uphill battle. And right before I say this, I want to fact check myself. Yeah. And then obviously with Reggie Gilliam as well, who is typically listed as the 4th running back, but we all know is a fullback. So he would have to significantly impress in training camp for him to be able to get this 53-man roster. I think he could be a practice squad guy, or maybe he's released and somebody else picks him up. But I don't think how the roster is currently built has an opening for him in 2025. And trust me, I would love it because I love a good feel-good story, right? I love a feel-good story. Clay Stevenson has come in. Which potential Buffalo picks do you see as immediate starters? Oh, man, let me tell you what. First off, I do want to say that it is very important that the first 3 selections for the Buffalo Bills need to be immediate starters, immediate impact players. That is like no margin for error there. Like first 3 selections, regardless if we take somebody in the first or our first selection is in the second, first 3 players that have the Buffalo Bills attached to them as the drafting team need to be impact day 1 players to knock out. So as far as day 1 impacts and targets, I'm pretty sure that we've had like a pretty good conversation. Let's start off with defensive tackles for Buffalo. Certainly Kenneth Grant, then Tyleik Williams, and then Omar Norman Lott for me. Same thing with Darius Alexander. He potentially could be a day one impact player for me. That's defensive tackle. Corner, and now I'm only talking about guys that are realistically in our gun range, right? One is Trey Amos, two is Azareye'h Thomas, three is Maxwell Harrison. Those three, I think, would be impact day one starters almost immediately. Wide receiver, as far as a vertical separator, as far as somebody I think that could be a day one contributor. We have a Jalen Royals. We have a Kyle Williams. And also, I guess I'll throw Isaiah Bond in there. Because some part of me feels that I have been unfair to Texas wide receivers. And the more and more that I reflect, it just appears that it was a Quinn Ewers problem all along. Bill 716 question. We know how high Bills Mafia feels about Kenneth Grant, but where do you realistically have him ranked? Also, PFF has him as high as 16th, while PFN has him around 38th. It just depends on what platform that you put more salt into, right? Like what platform do you take more seriously? Because do remember, PFF and PFN have their own independent scouts. I think he falls right between that number there, right? Like say that I were to guess, he's going to be around the 24 range, which is why I think Buffalo still might marginally trade up to go grab him if, for example. And we have Habitual Line Stepper. Of course, Dan, my favorite Bills content creator. Plus, I have to scout the problems with other threats to a Super Bowl run. Dude, listen, I appreciate that on so many levels. And shout out to Mr. J Blonde for coming in with a $20 donation and a question. I appreciate that, Mr. J Blonde. You have no idea. Seriously, man, I appreciate that. He says, do you think the Bills will trade up to get Kenneth Grant? I see him going 15 to 25 in the draft. Seems like from what I'm hearing, Beane is more inclined to get a defensive tackle in the second and or the third round. And you know what? You do bring up a point, right? Because at the beginning of this episode, we ended up looking at the list of all of our top 30 visits. And the only group as far as a position that had two prospects that have been unanimously being selected in the first round have been a cornerback, have been Trey Amos, have been Siobhan Revell. Where the only top 30 visits that we have actually spent resources on meeting, right, or inviting for a private workout have been second round guys like Tyleek Williams and or the Omar Norman Lott. I feel like Kenneth Grant is truly who Buffalo wants, but I don't think that they would trade up as high as and rate, as you pointed out, at 15, right? I'm not even sure if they would trade up for Kenneth Grant to, I'd say, 21. Some mock drafts have Kenneth Grant going to the Pittsburgh Steelers with the 21st overall pick. Some have him falling into the early second. I think that if Grant is still on the board at 24, then I think Buffalo is going to trade up with Minnesota to get him. I'm starting to convince myself as well that if Buffalo does not have Kenneth Grant and the board is falling a particular way, we can stay put or trade down and grab a corner. Siobhan Revell, perhaps. I don't know. But Mr. J Blonde, I appreciate the super chat. $20 donation to the channel. That is awesome. Guys, easiest way to show love over here for the daily podcast, the Dom Mafia Report, is quite simply just by smashing that like button, hitting that thumbs up sign. So this could be propelled out to the YouTube universe where more hungry Bills fans who want to talk ball on a daily basis can discover this. And plus, we are trying to build our live chat community. And shout out to the Spotify listeners and the Apple Podcast listeners as well. We have Jason Scherf has come in. Is trading down out of the first a ploy to gain a third rounder? Beane has adamantly discussed how important third round picks are to him. I can assure you that the fact he does not have a third round pick is keeping him up at night. And I can assure you that he will get there somehow, right? Trading down could be to get him into the third, have 3 second-round picks, and don't even shy away from him being aggressive and moving up slightly in the second again, while still maintaining a third-round pick too. It's certainly around. While we don't have it, I can promise you that we will ultimately end up finding a way to get it done. We got Billy D has come in and he says, Dan, and do you think Beane will get the job done? I hope so, man. Like any draft, I sincerely hope that that is the case. We have No Bones About It has come in with a statement here. He says CB2 is the highest priority for this team right now because we don't currently have a starter there and is a lot more depth at the defensive tackle position in the second round than a cornerback. I mean, listen, that is probably one of the most heavily debated topics across Bills Mafia already. Is it CB2 or is it defensive tackle? That is needed. I don't know, guys. You be the judge. You be the judge. We have David Abbott has come in with a question, and I appreciate that, David. Hello, Dan. I would like to know your rating regarding Brandon Beane and his draft years. 2018 and 2022 were good drafts, but personally, I find the results of the other years ordinary. Do you think Beane is one of the best GMs for the draft in this league? So that's an interesting topic. And that is also a heavily debated topic, right? Like some of the more pessimistic fans say that Brandon Beane is the worst. He's the worst GM to ever do it. He can't hit on a first-round draft pick to save his life. He should be fired. But then you have another group of fans that say he is the best to ever do it, that he's the best to ever do it. I'm kind of closer to the latter. Nowhere close, all right? Nowhere close to he's the best to ever do it. But I do think that Brandon Beane has shown in several examples that he is an absolute titan when it comes into identifying talent in the mid rounds. And to be honest with you, like this morning, I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw this one account that put together a graphic of the previous first rounds of like the last like 5 NFL drafts. And you would be surprised like how many teams truly hit on their first round selections. Like you would really be surprised. Like I am talking about franchise altering players, like crazy players, like guys that, and there are a lot more just guys. Like not like, oh my God, he lived up to his first round hype. Being by himself, my favorite draft of his was 2022 when he was able to walk away with James Cook in the second. You have Christian Benford in the later rounds. You had Khalil Shakir and Terrell Bernard. All players. 3 of the 4, which ended up getting extensions. 3 of the 4. And 4 of the 4 that everybody was pounding the table saying, dude, we need to sign this guy regardless. Like, we need to sign this guy regardless. We need to bring these guys back on extensions. So he finds the diamonds in the rough toward the end. He was the man that did finesse into Josh Allen, right? Like and look, I feel like he needs to be able to ride that horse a bit, right? Because he did a lot to trade up and grab Josh Allen in the draft. And he was probably one of the most polarizing prospects in that draft class by itself. Several Bills fans watching this right now, I could guarantee you at least 50% of you wanted Josh Rosen. And the real metric is probably 80%. And the real metric is probably 80%. But some of us just aren't brave enough to admit it, right? I was included in that. I was not convinced that Josh Allen would have been able to make the transition into the NFL. He did. Thank God. Thank God I was not the GM in that situation. Cheetos and Netflix. Who do you think is a better tackler? Ingram and or Dane Jackson? Don't sleep on Dane Jackson, man. He's a pretty solid tackler. Like some corners, folks, like some corners just excel in specific systems, right? And again, Here's the deal when it comes into CB2. Last year, Rasul Douglas did not provide a single turnover for us, and there were several games where we were scratching our heads saying, why the hell is he out there in the first place? But he was also a part of a defense that was number one in turnover differential. Like, we created turnovers like nobody's business last year, and Rasul Douglas provided literally zero. So realistically, since everybody else from that secondary is returning in 2025, like, what are we replacing? Like, what are we replacing, right? Like, say that Dane Jackson was the starter, and he's not going to be. Like, we are more than likely going to draft a CB2. Actually, we are 110% going to draft a CB2. But worst case scenario, say that Dane Jackson was the starter in 2025. And the dude by himself, like, he also, again, provided a very similar season to what Rasul Douglas did last year. Likely, not a lot is going to change. But have no fear. We have Dane Jackson out there for the exact same role he has played for this team throughout his several campaigns in Buffalo. Clay Stevenson, how excited are you for the draft? Will you be doing a live show conjunction? I will be doing a live show, a live play-by-play NFL draft reaction is coming to you guys on day one of the draft. Oh, boys. I'm so excited for it. And I highly recommend that you tune in if you haven't had the opportunity of doing so already. So make sure when you subscribe, you turn on those bell notifications because I will be giving you play-by-play on the NFL draft. And my company, Roundtable Sports, is actually going to be at the NFL draft. I will not be in attendance, but Richie and TD, and then two of our other podcasters will be there giving you live coverage as well. So the draft is going to be a hell of a time. Gary has come in and saying it's not just the GM, it's the entire staff. And unfortunately, the Bills front office lost people to the New York Giants. That makes a big difference. Indeed. That is a very good way of looking at it. I mean, we do know, and this is coming from Jersey J. I mean, we do know is defense. We need to fix, remember, who we have at QB. I am not worried about the offense. We have KB has come in, said, hand up. Billy D. Williams. It's not Beane. It's McDermott and the coaching. We have Gary has come in. Vade has come in with a statement. Dan, I just want to let you know that I saw you were live. I jumped out of the shower and ran to the TV where I watch on YouTube and use my phone to chat. Dude, I appreciate that, man. I sincerely appreciate that. I still hope that you were and able to wash all appropriate body parts there, man. You know what I mean? Some good hygiene, but I appreciate the dedication. I really, really do. Vade, you are the man. I appreciate you. And so I feel like you're relatively new to the channel, right? I feel like you are. So I feel like I've welcomed quite a few newbies during this offseason, and I am so thankful that we're adding to the family. Bills 716. Could you look at running back prospect Jarquez Hunter, 5'9", 206 pounds. He is a home run threat while boasting a career 6 yards per carry. He's extremely explosive and runs a 4.4 40. He's a projected 5th and or a 6th rounder. Happy to, my friend. I just don't think that we're going to be walking away with a running back this year. If we do, it's going to be a 5th or a 6th. But like, here's my thing. Say that we spend a pick on a running back, so within the 5th and or the 6th round, like, who's he beating out, right? So Reggie Gilliam's making this team, right? Like, he always does. Cook is going to play. We have Ty Johnson is going to play, and Ray Davis is going to play. So are we going to use a draft pick for somebody that's just automatically going to be on the practice squad? That's kind of like why I haven't bought into the fact that we would walk away with a running back. Ward Sampson. You can complain about his drafting, but being his re-signed every player that we wanted him to and below market value, I am happy with him. I 110% agree. We have Derek Cunningham is coming with a question. Dan, I'm just getting in here. Who have we had in for top 30 and who is scheduled for the future? So far, who we have had, and the list is as updated as I could find. And granted, this is just public information. 3 cornerbacks, Siobhan Revel Jr., Trey Amos, and Dorian Strong. Out of defensive ends, we had Femi Oladejo and Braden Swinson, an edge rusher out of LSU. Defensive tackles, Tyleek Williams, Omar Norman-Lott. Safety, Billy Bowman Jr. And wide receivers include, which is quite a bit, we had Isaiah Bond, we had Jalen Lane, we had Keandre Lambert-Smith, we had Arian Smith, we had Isaac Tesla, and Jalen Royals. Those are the public pieces of information. And then local pro day attendees was Camden White, a defensive lineman. We had Elijah Clark, safety out of Syracuse, Marlo Wax, linebacker out of Syracuse, and Sean Dolak, linebacker out of the University of Buffalo. Beanie Man 95, one of my mods, and shout out to my mods. Shout out to Dwayne. Shout out to my boy Mike Beanie. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you for always keeping the peace in the live chat. He said 38 likes is ridiculous. I know we can do better than that. Smash that like button. Guys, listen. Sometimes when it comes into the like button, I think people just forget, and that's completely fine, right? We are all human. But say, for example, you're vibing with the show. Just do me a favor and take the literal millisecond of just hitting that thumbs up sign for me. You know what I mean, folks? Helps propel it out to the YouTube algorithm. I do this show daily. Very oftentimes, I go twice a day, Monday through Friday, and even sprinkle in an occasional Saturday, Sunday episode. So if you're vibing with the content, just hit that like button for me. It's free and takes a millisecond, baby. We have Donnie Yobs. Question: who best compares to Kenneth Grant, since it doesn't look like we will get him? So what I'm looking for with the defensive tackle position is a big body run stopper. Those are the two things that I need. I don't necessarily need somebody that has crazy pass rushing chops. I don't need a 3-tech. I need a 1-tech. Somebody that is going to draw fear in offensive line coaches, that is going to assign 2 blockers on said guy. Tyleek Williams is one. You have Darius Alexander is another. You have Omar Norman-Lott is another as well. I suppose you could toss in Dion Walker, but he's a bit more of a project defensive tackle. I wouldn't be confident that he could be a day one starter. Would probably have to be somebody that would need to be developed, and I would much prefer him as a double dip candidate. But I really like those 3 guys right there. You have Tyleek Williams, you have Darius Alexander, and then you have Omar Norman-Lott. Those 3 I would be fine with. Say, for example, that we decided to go with a CB2 for the first. We have Vade has come in. Dan, what steps are you expecting Ray Davis and Keon Coleman to take in year 2? Man, you know what? I love this question because it's something that happens every single year. There is always a player that takes a massive second-year jump for this team that just completely flies off of the shelves. And my big impact player is going to be Javon Solomon. I have a feeling this is the year where Javon Solomon actually makes an impact on the defensive line. He is 2 years removed from being college football's sack leader. Yes, he is a bit undersized, but the guy is an absolute athletic freak. He did make plays when we needed him to, right? So Solomon is probably my breakout player of 2025. Keon, I have a feeling, is just going to sit his role. So do I think that his yards are going to go up? Yes, but I still think that he is going to be our contested catch guy. I would like to see his touchdowns go up because that's exactly what he is built for, is to be a physical wide receiver that can climb the ladder. Leverage him in the red zone for me. So I can see him improving in that category. And then Ray Davis, it just depends on like what the snap share is going to look like, right? Like I do anticipate that his responsibilities are going to increase. It's hard to say if he is going to have more snaps or more opportunities than James Cook this year. I'm not entirely sure, but say that his growth and trajectory mimics last year, then I think that we are in a very good spot. We have Bobby Hall has come in saying, what about Dwayne Carter? Man, listen, you know that So I love me some Dwayne Carter. I really, really do. So him and Ed Oliver basically play the exact same position at 3 tech, and Dwayne had several plays. It all depends on what his snap share is going to be. And I'm also very optimistic that if he can stay healthy all year, because last year, as we remember, he had wrist surgery. Like, rest in peace to wrists for the Buffalo Bills last year in 2024. Half of the reason why I think that our strength and conditioning coach ended up getting the boot, because that was an injury that just plagued us last year. I am also very optimistic that he will be able to get his. Oh my God. Magneto has come in. What's up, Dan? What are your thoughts on Shiloh Sanders, a day 3 pick? Is he a day 3? Well, yeah, I suppose he is, because I feel like oftentimes I always confuse. So I always confuse day 3 and round 3, and I don't know why my mind always goes to round 3. I'll probably pass. I'll probably pass on that one. Spin 0481. Is Shiloh a safety? He's a DB. I know that. He is a safety. Indeed. He was not invited to the combine. I do remember that, but that doesn't mean that he's not a diamond in the rough. Is Cooper staying? If so, does he get a larger role? Damon, so far, he is still a pending free agent, right? So he was not re-signed by the Buffalo Bills. He was not signed by anybody. So I think it just depends. We will see if a team ends up bringing him in. Is he a free safety? Let's go ahead and check out what Shiloh Sanders did last year. If he was a strong or he was a free. Let's see. Shiloh. He had 2 coverage stops, 3 run stops. He allowed 7 receptions out of 9 targets. His passer rating allowed was 155.8 last year in 2024. He allowed 1 touchdown and only 2 forced incompletions. Played 10 games last year, had 50 tackles, 322 coverage snaps. His coverage grade is, I suppose, average. I'm still a Billy Bowman guy. Mike check. Mike, what up, dude? Surprise early round position the Bills go after, like linebacker, tight end, or running back. Surprise early rounds. I have a feeling they're staying put at either a defensive tackle, a CB2, and then a wide receiver. But if anything, say that an edge rusher that just falls dramatically once it comes time for us to pick is available, I would not be shocked. I would not be shocked at all. Vade has come in and says, Dan, what are your thoughts on wide receiver Jimmy Horn Jr.? So I feel like he would be a kind of wide receiver that we would bring in if, for example, we lost out on several of our 3rd and 4th round targets. He'd be interesting. Like, he has speed on the outside. He could do a couple of things here and there, but I don't think that we should go into this draft saying that no matter what, we need to just wait for the 5th or the 6th to walk away with Jimmy Horn. We have David Abbott. With the upcoming draft, which team among Dolphins, Pats, Jets could give Buffalo a hard time next season? So I'll start this off by saying this AFC East is Buffalo's again. Like, we will walk away with this division like usual. I don't really see a world where a Josh Allen being on the Buffalo Bills, not winning the AFC East is even a reality. But a team that I think is going to go into 2nd place, threaten a wild card spot, would be the Patriots, I would say. So I'm not so much concerned about the Jets. I'm certainly not concerned about the Miami Dolphins. Like, they have lost so many players this offseason. It's looking like Tyreek Hill is, or the last of Tyreek Hill has been in Miami too. I'd say the Jets and the Dolphins are, I'd say, in line of having 2 very rough seasons. 2 very rough seasons. And it's going to be Bills, and it is going to be the Pats, who are 1st and 2nd. Hamlin is a fringe starter in the NFL, one of the best backup safeties in the NFL. Shiloh's ceiling might be Hamlin, but he's not at that level considering he didn't even get an invite to the combine. Damon McNair, you seem a lot about these college players, even the ones without a big name. Is there any teams you don't study? So to be honest with you, I really don't study the teams. I just study like prospects, right? And it's very easy. Like how I do is like I start off with very granular like level like research. Like what I'll do is like once the big board is released, I just end up looking at positions of need for the Buffalo Bills. And then I also end up looking at box stats, which I find intriguing, and then say that that ends up giving me a green flag. That's when I end up leveraging some of my resources where I can look at the film, for example. Like, for example, right? So the Buffalo Bills don't need a left tackle, so I wouldn't be able to tell you a thing about any of the left tackles in the NFL. It's really only prospects that jump out to me initially from the box stats. And if it appears to be a fit based off of the statistics, that's when I end up looking at film and looking at the nitty-gritty sort of stuff. But I don't really watch a lot of college football. I wish that I did because I feel like it would be a bit easier and it would sort of shorten the learning curve, if you will. But that's kind of how I do it, right? Like, so I look at the box stats first based off of positions of need I think the Buffalo Bills need. Say that anything jumps out to me. That's when I unpack the film, typically. Magneto is saying, what are your thoughts on Georgia linebacker Jalen Walker? He reminds me of a young Von Miller. I mean, solid player. I don't know if he would fit into what the Bills are looking for, especially since he's like a first kind of guy. We have Ryan. He's coming in saying Bishop deserves a larger role next year. Also wonder if Van Pran is going to get a chance soon. Here's the deal. So McGovern, he is set for a contract extension next year, or yeah. So we'll see. We'll see, man, if he is the future. Dan, and how do you feel about a tight end to complement with Kincaid? We have Dawson Knox under contract too. I don't think that we'd be looking for a tight end until next year. Where do you see Cedric Van Pran Granger's ceiling is at? And do you think he can be our starting left guard next season after we move on from Edwards? I don't believe that he ever had any experience outside of the center position. Like he has only ever played center. So I don't think that we would trust him in that capacity. I feel like we would probably have to go to the draft, right? Like next year, like draft priorities for Buffalo would probably be left guard / center, right? Running back would probably be selected in the early rounds if, for example, we don't bring back James Cook, which I'm thinking we are not going to. But that's me. But folks, thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the Dom Mafia Report. This show is a daily show where I hop on and I discuss the most trending topics surrounding our favorite team. Very oftentimes, I am live twice a day if, for example, there's news that I feel like needs to be discussed. If you're vibing with the show, please do me a favor and take the millisecond of just smashing that thumbs up sign for me. And when you subscribe, make sure you turn on bell notifications because I want you guys to be a part of our live chat community. As you can see, I talk for the first 15 to 20 minutes of each episode. And then afterwards, it is the Wild West of a Q&A segment. I love each and every single one of you. Thank you so much. And I will see you later this afternoon. Peace.